The mangled frame of a child's pink bicycle lay smashed against the unforgiving curb. Its front wheel bent at a sickening angle, bright streamers now limp and mud-stained. Beside it, a man knelt, his body a silhouette of pure despair against a relentless, sleeting rain. Arthur's shoulders heaved with sobs that were stolen by the wind, his hands, raw and trembling, gripping the cold, twisted metal as if pleading with it to unbend, to rewind time itself. His face, buried in his arms, was unseen, but his grief was a palpable force, radiating outwards into gray, indifferent city. Then a sleek black limousine, almost silent on the wet asphalt, glided into view. It stopped, a door opened, and from the opulent interior stepped Eleanor Vance, her elegant figure momentarily framed by the rain. Her gaze fell upon Arthur, then the shattered bicycle, and the world seemed to tilt. A gasp caught in her throat, her perfectly composed face cracking with an expression of profound, horrified empathy, a mirror reflecting a pain she knew all too well. In that instant, two worlds, separated by an ocean of fortune and circumstance, were about to collide. Arthur hadn't always been this broken monument to sorrow. There was before a vibrant, sunlit time when his world spun around the laughter of his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily, with her scraped knees, her paint-stained fingers, and a spirit as bright and boundless as a summer sky. He remembered her tiny hand in his, warm and trusting, as they walked to the park, her endless stream of questions about clouds and caterpillars and why the sky was blue. Arthur was a carpenter by trade, his hands, now gnarled and weathered, once deft and strong, capable of coaxing beauty from raw timber. He'd built Lily a dollhouse with miniature, perfectly crafted furniture, and for her 7th birthday, he'd found that pink bicycle at a thrift store, lovingly restoring it, painting in her favorite shade, adding those silly, joyful streamers. He wasn't a man of means, their small apartment humble, but was filled to overflow with love that made them richer than kings. Lily would pedal down their street, a little wobbly at first, her delighted shrieks echoing, the streamers flying like tiny flags of pure happiness. That sound, that image, was seared into his soul. Then the world had fractured, a blaring horn, the horrific screech of tires fighting for purchase on asphalt, followed by a sickening, metallic crunch that ripped through the ordinary afternoon. A dark sedan, fleeing, disappearing around the corner like a cowardly shadow. Lily was gone. The driver was never identified. The case quickly growing cold, another unsolved tragedy in a city that quickly forgot. For Arthur, forgetting was an impossibility. Lily's absence was a gaping wound that refused to heal, a constant, throbbing ache. The scent of sawdust, once a comfort, now brought only tears. His tools lay abandoned, gathering rust, much like his spirit. Work became impossible. The vibrant colors of his life leached away, leaving only a monochrome existence of grief. The bills mounted. The eviction notice followed, and soon the streets became his reluctant sanctuary, the worn photograph of Lily his only precious possession. Each sunrise was a reminder of another day to endure without her, each sunset a prelude to a night haunted by her laughter, now a cruel echo in the vast emptiness of his heart. Across the city, in a palatial residence overlooking manicured gardens, Eleanor Vance navigated her own silent, opulent prison of grief. Her husband, Charles, the robust, visionary industrialist who had been her partner in life and love for 4 decades, had succumbed to a relentless illness 6 months prior. His absence was a chasm in her existence. The mansion, once filled with his vibrant energy, their shared conversations, and the quiet hum of their intertwined lives, now felt cavernous, its luxurious rooms echoing with profound silence that amplified her loneliness. She was surrounded by priceless artifacts, attended by a discreet and loyal staff, yet she felt utterly, achingly alone. Eleanor formally presided over the vast Vance Foundation, the philanthropic arm of Charles's empire, signing checks, attending board meetings via video call, but all felt distant. Charles had been the fire behind it. His belief in using their immense wealth as a force for good, a genuine passion. With great privilege comes great responsibility, Ellie, he used to say, his eyes alight. Now, she felt the weight of that responsibility, but the spark, the personal connection, the meaning seemed to have died with him. Her days were a meticulously scheduled procession of empty rituals, her sorrow a heavy velvet curtain separating her from the pulse of the world. It was the first anniversary of that terrible day. The calendar date had loomed like a specter in Arthur's mind for weeks, a day he both dreaded and felt compelled to honor. An irresistible, agonizing pull had drawn him back to this exact spot, the scene of his life's unraveling. He'd found the mangled bicycle weeks ago, rusting behind a pawn shop, recognizing it instantly. He'd traded his last decent pair of shoes for it, carrying its awkward, painful weight for miles, a penance, a memorial. He propped against the indifferent lamppost, then from a pocket produced a small, wilting bunch of dandelions. Lily had called them sunshine flowers, and laid them gently on the rain-slicked pavement. Then he simply knelt and let the storm inside him match the one raging outside. Eleanor's chauffeur, Thomas, a stoic man who had served the Van Cess for over 30 years, navigated the downpour with his customary unflappable competence. Eleanor had impulsively asked to be driven through some of the older city neighborhoods, a deviation from her usual hermetic routine. Perhaps she sought a distraction, or perhaps some unconscious part of her was searching for something, anything, to pierce the numbness. As they turned onto a less-traveled side street, Thomas slowed almost imperceptibly, his gaze briefly noting the scene by the lamppost. A homeless man, a broken bicycle. His training dictated he should accelerate to shield Mrs. Vance from such unpleasantries. Thomas stopped the car. Eleanor's voice was low, but it cut through the gentle hum of the engine with an undeniable urgency. Thomas glanced in the rear-view mirror, his expression carefully neutral. "Madam, perhaps it would be best if we continued. The weather—" "No. Stop. Right here." Eleanor was already leaning forward, her eyes riveted. It wasn't just the man's destitution, nor the rain. It was the bicycle. So small, so clearly a child's. And the way the man was draped over it, his entire being radiating a grief so profound, so raw. It felt like a physical blow. It bypassed the defenses, striking a chord deep within her own bruised heart, a terrible, shared understanding. The carefully constructed walls around her grief crumbled. Her own loss, still so sharp, resonated with his. She had to. She didn't know why, but she had to. Overcoming a deep-seated inertia, the habit of withdrawal that had become her norm since Charles's passing. She reached for the door handle. "I'll only be a moment." The rain was cold on Eleanor's face as she stepped out, Thomas quickly appearing with an umbrella, which she gently waved away. This was not a moment for polite societal buffers. She approached Arthur slowly, her expensive leather shoes making soft sounds on the wet pavement. He didn't look up, so consumed was he by his sorrow. "Excuse me," she said, her voice softer than the rain. Arthur startled, lifting a ravaged face, his eyes bloodshot and wary, suspicion flaring instantly. "What you want?" he rasped, his voice hoarse. "Leave me be. Can't you see I'm—" His gesture toward the bicycle was laden with unspeakable pain. Eleanor didn't recoil from his appearance, nor his anguish. Instead, she saw a reflection of her own desolation, albeit in a harsher, more brutal setting. "I am so deeply sorry," she said, her voice imbued with genuine empathy that surprised him. I understand loss. More than you know." The simple words, devoid of pity or judgment, hung in the air. Arthur stared at her, this elegant, composed woman who spoke of understanding his private hell. He saw no condescension in her gaze, only a profound, shared sadness that momentarily breached his defenses. Eleanor fumbled in her handbag, not for money, but for a small, silver thermos of warm tea she often carried, a habit from Charles's long illness. She also pulled out a pristine linen handkerchief. She held them out. Perhaps this might offer a little warmth. Arthur didn't move, his eyes still narrowed, trying to decipher her motive. Eleanor then pressed a simple, unadorned card into his hand. It held only a name and a private telephone number. "My name is Eleanor," she said. If you ever feel the need to talk, or if there's anything at all I might be able to do, please call." He looked from the card to her face, confusion warring with a lifetime of disappointments. She offered a small, almost hesitant smile, a flicker of human connection in the downpour, then turned and walked back to the limousine, leaving Arthur clutching the card, a tiny, unexpected ember in a vast, cold wasteland of his grief. The rain continued, but for the first time in a long, long time, Arthur felt something other than utter desolation. A question, a fragile, almost imperceptible flicker of something. Days crawled by. Arthur kept the card, moving from one pocket to another, taking it out occasionally to stare at the elegant script. Eleanor. He'd almost thrown it away a dozen times, convinced it was some rich woman's fleeting act of conscience, already forgotten. Who was she? Why would she care? The streets were a cruel teacher, and trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. But the nights grew colder, the dampness settling deep into his bones, igniting a persistent, racking cough. One particularly bitter evening, huddled in a cardboard lean-to behind a bakery, the gnawing hunger a constant companion. His despair reached a terrifying crescendo. Lily's smiling face shimmered in his mind's eye, not accusingly, but with a heartbreaking innocence. He couldn't let her memory be his only legacy of failure. He had to try. With trembling, frost-numb fingers, he retrieved the card. Finding a rare working payphone, he fed it his last few coins and dialed, his heart hammering against his ribs, fully expecting a curt dismissal from an assistant or a disconnected line. "Hello?" The voice was calm, warm, instantly recognizable. It was her, Eleanor. A wave of dizziness, of sheer, improbable relief, washed over him. It's Arthur," he managed, his voice a dry croak. "The man with the bicycle." "Arthur," she replied, and there was a genuine warmth in her tone. "I'm so glad you called. I was hoping you would. Are you somewhere you can talk? Perhaps we could meet? There's a small, quiet cafe, the Corner Perk, near Elm Street Park. Would tomorrow, say 1 o'clock, be suitable?" The next day, Arthur, having scrubbed himself as best he could in the cold water of a public washroom and smoothed down his worn clothes, made his way to the Corner Perk. It was unpretentious, filled with the comforting clatter of cups and the aroma of fresh coffee and cinnamon. Eleanor was already seated at a discreet table by the window, a book lying unread beside her. She looked up as he approached and offered a soft smile that eased some of the tightness in his chest. He sat awkward and unsure. She ordered them both coffee and a warm pastry for him, effortlessly put him at ease with gentle, unassuming conversation about the weather, the park. Then quietly she asked, "Arthur, would you like to tell me about Lily?" And the dam broke, haltingly at first, then with a torrent of words held back for too long. He spoke of his daughter. He described her infectious giggle, her fascination with ladybugs, the way she'd snuggle into his side when he read her bedtime stories. He talked about her dreams of becoming an artist, her messy, joyful paintings that had once adorned their apartment walls. He pulled out the creased, precious photograph, laying on the table between them. He recounted the horror of the accident, the crushing weight of his helplessness, the cold, bureaucratic indifference that had followed, the aching injustice of an unsolved crime. Eleanor listened. She truly listened, her gaze never wavering, her expression reflecting his pain. She didn't offer empty platitudes or easy solutions. She simply bore witness to his grief. When he finally fell silent, emotionally exhausted, tears tracking to the grime on his cheeks, she reached across the table and gently, briefly, covered his hand with hers. "Thank you, Arthur," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for sharing her with me. She sounds like she was a truly wonderful little girl." Then, in a quiet voice, she shared a little of her own story of Charles, of the immense void his passing had left, of the silence in her big, empty house. It wasn't a comparison of sorrows, but a bridge of shared human experience. That meeting was the first of many. Eleanor, with immense tact and respect for his fragile pride, began to offer practical help. She arranged for him to see a kind doctor about his cough, who diagnosed a mild pneumonia and prescribed antibiotics. She found him a clean, modest room in a guest house run by a gentle elderly couple, insisting it was a temporary arrangement, a place for him to recover his strength. No strings, Arthur. Just a safe harbor for a while. She'd bring him warm meals, sometimes eating with him, sometimes just dropping them off. She bought him new, sturdy clothes, chosen with thought, not like discards. Arthur, slowly, painstakingly, began to trust her. He started to sketch again, timidly at first, a bird on a wire, a sleeping cat, the pattern of leaves. The harsh lines around his mouth softened. A little light began to return to his eyes. The connection between them, born of a rainy day and a shared understanding of loss, deepened, becoming a quiet anchor for both of them. Several weeks later, during one of their quiet conversations in the guest house lounge, Eleanor looked at Arthur with new intensity, a focused determination in her eyes. She had been doing more than just offering comfort and practical aid. She had been wrestling with a larger thought, a more profound way to help. "Arthur," she began, her voice calm but firm, "I've been thinking a great deal about Lily, about the injustice of it all. The police, they did what they could with their resources, I suppose, but it's not enough. It's not right." Arthur looked at her, his brow furrowed. He had come to accept her kindness, her steady presence in his life, but he couldn't imagine what more she meant. "I have access to resources, Arthur," Eleanor continued, choosing her words carefully. "Resources that might be able to pick up the trail where the police left off, to look at things with fresh eyes, with more dedicated attention." She leaned forward slightly. "Arthur, I want to hire private investigators. The very best. I want to find the person who took Lily from you. I want to try and bring them to justice." The words hung in the air. Arthur stared at her, his mind struggling to process what she was saying. Private investigators? It was a concept from movies, from a world utterly alien to his. A spark, so faint he thought it long extinguished, ignited deep within him. Hope, terrifying, exhilarating hope. His eyes, which had wept so many tears of sorrow, now filled with tears of stunned disbelief. "You would do that?" he whispered, his voice cracking. For Lily?" "Yes, Arthur," Eleanor affirmed, her gaze steady and resolute. "For Lily, and for you. No child's life should be so carelessly extinguished, and no parent should have to bear that loss without answers, without accountability." And so the search began. Eleanor, true to her word, engaged a highly respected firm of private investigators known for their tenacity and discretion. The lead investigator, a calm, intelligent woman named Sarah Albright, met with both Eleanor and Arthur. Arthur, his memory sharpened by a renewed sense of purpose, painstakingly recounted every detail of that dreadful day, every fleeting image, every half-remembered sound. Eleanor, meanwhile, found a new energy. This was not abstract philanthropy. This was direct, meaningful action. She felt Charles's approval, his spirit, beside her. This is what he meant, she murmured to herself one evening, reviewing a preliminary report. This is responsibility in action. She shared this with Arthur, telling him how Charles had always championed the underdog, how he believed their fortune was a tool for enacting positive change, for righting wrongs when possible. This wasn't just Eleanor's kindness. It was a legacy she was now actively embodying. The investigation was arduous. Weeks turned into months. There were frustrating dead ends, interviews that yielded nothing, moments when even Miss Albright seemed disheartened. Arthur rode an emotional roller coaster, his hopes soaring with every potential lead, then plummeting with each setback. Eleanor remained his steadfast anchor, her calm belief in the process unwavering, at least outwardly. She learned to manage her own expectations, to offer Arthur steady encouragement without false promises. Then, a breakthrough. Ms. Albright's team, re-examining Graney, overlooked security footage from a store 2 blocks from the accident scene, isolated a fleeting image of a dark blue sedan with a distinctive aftermarket spoiler. It wasn't much, but it was more than they'd had. They cross-referenced this with a list of similar vehicles reported for traffic violations around that time. One name, Marcus Thorne, kept appearing, associated with speeding tickets, often dismissed by high-priced lawyers. Thorne's family was wealthy, influential, known for protecting their reckless son. Further digging revealed that a vehicle matching the description, registered to a Thorne family corporation, had undergone extensive, unrecorded bodywork at a private garage shortly after Lily's accident. The pieces began to fit. The day Ms. Albright called Eleanor with the definitive news, they had enough evidence to present a compelling case to the district attorney. Eleanor felt a surge of quiet triumph, immediately followed by a wave of concern for Arthur. This next phase would be even harder. When Marcus Thorne was finally arrested, Arthur insisted on being there, not at the arrest itself, but at the courthouse for the arraignment. He stood a little taller, his clothes neat, his eyes clear, though filled with an ocean of pain. Eleanor was by his side, a silent, supportive presence. Seeing Thorne young, sullen, flanked by expensive lawyers, Arthur felt a complex storm of emotions, a fresh wave of searing grief for Lily, a cold knob anger, and then beneath it all a profound, almost unbearable sense underscore of validation. Lily mattered. Her life, so brutally cut short, was not going to be forgotten or ignored. Later that day, back in the quiet solitude of his guest-house room, the facade of composure Arthur had maintained finally crumbled. He wept, not with the despairing sobs of that day by the roadside, but with tears of release, of a burden too heavy to bear alone finally being shared and in some small way eased. He looked at Eleanor, his voice thick with unshed emotion. "Eleanor, there are no words. You didn't just find him. You gave Lily her voice back. You showed me that kindness still exists, that people still care." Eleanor's own eyes glistened. She gently placed her hand on his arm. "We did it, Arthur," she said softly, her voice full of warmth. "We did it for Lily." In that moment, the vast, echoing rooms of her mansion felt a little less empty. She had found a purpose that resonated deep within her soul, a connection to the world that Charles would have cherished. A few weeks later, on a crisp autumn morning, they stood together before a newly placed headstone in a peaceful cemetery. It was simple, elegant, bearing Lily's name, her dates, and a beautifully carved image of a hummingbird in flight. Arthur had told Eleanor how Lily had adored watching them in the park. He'd never been able to afford a proper marker. Eleanor had arranged it, another quiet act of profound generosity. Arthur traced the letters of Lily's name with a trembling finger. He placed a small hand-carved wooden bluebird he'd made at its base. The legal battle would continue, but here, In the quiet sanctity of this place, a measure of peace had been found. Justice had a face, and Lily's memory was honored. The conviction of Marcus Thorne, months later, brought a somber kind of closure. But for Arthur, it was also a beginning. The crushing weight of injustice, which had suffocated his spirit for so long, had finally been lifted. With Eleanor's continued, unwavering support and the guidance of a patient grief counselor she'd helped him find, Arthur began to tentatively rebuild. He moved into a small, bright apartment near a park, its windows filled with sunlight. Remembering Arthur's past as a skilled carpenter, Eleanor had a thought. The Vance Foundation was funding a new children's wing at the local library. "Arthur," she proposed one afternoon, "would you consider designing and building some special reading nooks for the children? Perhaps some whimsical bookshelves." The feel of wood under his hands, the scent of fresh shavings, the quiet satisfaction of shaping something beautiful and useful. It was therapy. His hands, once idle, now moved with renewed purpose. He poured his love for Lily into every curve, every joint. The reading nooks became magical little spaces, beloved by the children. He started volunteering there too, teaching small groups of eager youngsters the basics of woodworking, his quiet patience and gentle encouragement a gift to them all. He found joy in their enthusiasm, a faint, sweet echo of Lily's own. Eleanor, too, was transformed. The Vance Foundation, under her reinvigorated leadership, established Lily's Light, a dedicated program to provide legal aid, counseling, and support for families shattered by unsolved violent crimes, particularly those involving children. She was no longer a remote figurehead signing checks. She met with families, listened to their stories, her empathy now a powerful catalyst for action. Her mansion, once a symbol of her isolation, now hosted occasional, quiet gatherings for the Foundation's beneficiaries, filled with a warmth and purpose it hadn't known in years. Arthur and Eleanor's improbable friendship endured, a steady, quiet current in both their lives. They'd meet for coffee, discuss books, or simply walk in the park, observing the changing seasons. Sometimes, Arthur would bring a small, newly carved bird for Eleanor's desk. Their bond, forged in shared sorrow and nurtured by unexpected kindness, was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The mangled pink bicycle, long since cleared from the roadside, remained a vivid memory for both of them. But now, it symbolized not just devastating loss, but also the extraordinary capacity for human connection. The way one compassionate heart, brave enough to reach out, could illuminate the darkest of paths, bringing not just solace, but justice, healing, and profound, life-altering hope. Their story, whispered from one heart to another, became a quiet reminder that even in a world often shadowed by indifference, a single act of seeing, truly seeing another's pain, can change everything.